Okay, folks, let's have a look at this next part 3 of Boris Blake's TDD challenge from user stories. Cool. So I'm going to copy these user stories and put them into my README. So we're just going to keep extending what we have. So my copy didn't work. Boom, there we are. This is a more extensive than the previous two parts that we've done. Let's have a look at them. Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. So I'm going to have a look at my nouns and nouns and verbs. I already have my documentation and bike. Is there anything more in this part? Bike, working. We like to go back as working. That's more of an adjective than a verb, isn't it? But let's call it a verb. Works or working. So that's. I'm just going to put it here. As a member of the public, I like to report a bike as broken when I return it. So I think that's going to be a report method. Still bike. Like dog stations not to release broken bikes. So there's this thing of like understanding the status of a bike. So it might mean that we can update our objects here, and we're going to have a working method that should give back true or false. And a report method that sort of sets the state. And the data that I think it should have is essentially like a Boolean value, right? Working is going to be true or false. That's like it's the point of this bike. It should just hold a Boolean value true whether it's working or not. And yeah, so we'll just leave it like that for the moment. Like Dog says, stop to release broken bikes. So that's we're going to have to add a condition here. I like DocuStations to accept returning bikes, broken or not. So this shouldn't change anything. This is just like a mutation test almost. Like we should still be able to pass. Cool. So I've added nouns and verbs. I've added my messages from my verbs that I added, working report. And I thought about maybe like what my bike should hold as data, like a true or false value. Excuse me. So let's have a look at adding to my scenarios table for inputs and outputs. So I'm going to, I'll come back to the documentation second. I'm going to add the sort of more straightforward ones, which is going to be my bike. So my bike is going to have two methods. It's going to have a working, and it's going to have two scenarios because there'll be two different possibilities here, true or false. So I'm not going to worry about what the scenario is for the moment. So I want to call working, and it will either give me true, or it will give me false. Those are the two different possibilities here. And what are the scenarios? Well, one is when it works, and when it's broken. It is working. It's kind of straightforward, right? But yes. Okay, I think that is my working method done. Let's go to a report now. So we have a report method that I want. When it is broken, yes. I want to call report. want it to give me back false. I guess so. What I want this method to do is set state, right? So it's a weird one where it shouldn't really be necessarily outputting. I just want to change state. By default, I think when you change state, it will also refer to will return the instance variable that's set. So it should be false. There is no true value here because I'm only going to report bikes. So I guess that we could theoretically do an input here where we have a scenario where the bike is already stood the way around. So the scenario for the bike is like fine when it is working and we report it gives false, but also it's broken, so it's always going to give back false. So even if it's already broken, we try and report it, it'll be broken still. So I think that might neatly encapsulate that. Those are the two different inputs that like could either be broken or working, and we call the report method, and they both will be false. Cool, so I'd like documentations not to release broken bikes. So the release here, when there are bikes, release bike. So there's going to be another case here. So it could always just be sorry, none available, but maybe I'd give another error message here, or another sort of value, which is not that there are none, but that there are sorry when there are none working. All are broken. Let's just say that for a moment. So I think that case will cover this. Like documentation is not to release broken bikes. So the release method when there are bikes. Cool. Like say when there are working bikes. Let me update that to say when there are working bikes, which makes a little sense. When there are working bikes, we'll release a bike. When there are none, they are not available. When there are none working, sorry, all are broken. Okay. Documentation doc. Documentations to accept returning bikes, broken or not. So that should say the same. You should always be able to dock bikes, but still when it's at capacity, you can't dock a broken bike. Cool. So those are done. I might actually want to add like a little check mark to ones that I've done so I can kind of just see very quickly, because this is going quite long, right? So let's just add a little emoji. I'll quickly Google one. Green check mark emoji. Boom. Okay, so okay, lots of copy came across. Cool, maybe I should add like a status. Not too much. Do. It's a lot, isn't it? In which case, I need to add all of these. Alright, well, let's just see. I'm having fun with that. Yeah, it doesn't matter, does it? Okay, so what have I done already? Well, let's just run our tests and see what's failing. There we go. Can dock a bike when there are working bikes. Has a default capacity. can be initialized variable because we've got to operate out of work capacity. This one. And this one. So yeah, I've already done that. And not available, done. And enable working or broken. I feel like that's what I've done so far, right? Those are my methods done. Cool. So let's have a look at let's do the bike first, because I think that's going to be the more important one to start with. So notice that my bike at the moment is just an empty bike. Now I'm going to add behavior. Let's write a spec for it. Bike spec.rb. I need to add it to my spec runner. So my spec code, bike spec. Bike, and there we go, bike spec. So my bike spec, I'm going to take these two. There's the test that I'm going to be writing in a second. Let's do this one. Okay, so it, I'll put it down here. It can show it is working. So I put the first step as my setup phase, and then I might go into an execute phase, and then I might go into a verify phase. Okay, so bike is a new bike, and I want to execute some code. The result is bike.working ? And I want cert equals, my two values are, I'm going to check what result is equal to, and I want result to be when it's a working bike, true. Okay. And it can show it is not working. Okay, so there are a couple of different ways I'm going to do this. I could do this. I'm going to do that. I think probably a simpler one, but maybe not as good. I'm actually going to go to the report method. So I'm going to say bike.report as part of my setup, and then I'm going to ask bike.working and expect this to be false. So this is really, as a result, going to be, it can show it is cool. And the same one with new bike, we report it, and we report it again twice, and it's still going to be false. Cool. maybe an unnecessary test. This is checking that if you report it, it can still be reported. You show it's working, it should be reported as broken. This is already broken. So this should carry those two conditions, and then also these two conditions, because this should show that it's now false. So the reason why I don't like this as much is because this really should be what I'm executing and then verifying, rather than it be part of my setup. I'm kind of testing implicitly this method by using another method, which I'm not too happy about. But I'm going to do it for the moment. And write my code. So that's cool. Undefined method working for my bike class. So let's go to my bike class and define the method working. Another method report. Let's define a method report. Cool. We can show it is working. So let's start with the first one. I'm going to initialize my bicycle with a instance variable set at true. Create new working bikes. And my working is just going to return my instance variable and watch those tests pass. It can be reported as broken. I'm going to say app working is now false. Cool. So it is these two done. These ones done. Docking station release when there are none working, sorry, or are broken. Okay. So what's my spec look like? Go back to my docking station spec. Again, it's on the release, when I release. Not bike, I can race a bike, will not race a bike when there are none. Cool, let's grab this one, it's probably somewhat similar. Will not release a bike when there are no working bikes. Do docking station setup. Cool. Let's set up with a capacity of 1. Let's dock a broken bike. Bike equals bike dot new. Let's report the bike broken. Let's dock a broken bike. Let's execute some code. Just release a bike, and we should get sorry or broken. Not release a bike when there are no working bikes. Cool. So now let's make a pass. This is on the release one. Sorry, none are available if empty. So let's do another one. Return. Sorry, all are broken. If all broken. So let's write that as our private method. Def all broken. What's going to go here? We're going to go through the method and ask each bike whether it's working. So this is not going to work. This is checking if they're all working. I want like the opposite of that. wonder if Ruby has one like that. What's the opposite of all? The other way to do it, I guess, would be to do it a little bit differently. Let me just double check actually. Does Ruby have a none method, the opposite of the all method? Ruby none method. Oh, okay, it literally does. Okay. Did not expect that. That's none working. Does that? Will that work? If that works, Ruby's mad. Okay. Oh dear. Okay. So let's just add another condition because I worry. I want it to still release a bike when there is 1. So let's just double check. It will release a bike even when there are some broken bikes. So interestingly, we have to change some of the way that we've done something in a second. So we'll add some test cases. Because we don't want to release broken bikes. So let's have a think about release bike even when there are some broken bikes. I'm gonna do this one not just yet. We'll do a different condition, which is I want to go to the can release a bike. So here. It can release, it only releases bikes that are working. So that's, let's set up DocuStation. Let's set up a bike that has bike.report. So that's a broken bike. I'm going to dock a broken bike. And so this should not happen. So I should get an error message that says, let's do a working, because I want to make sure there is both a working bike and a broken bike. And I'm going to dock both. So I've got a DocuStation, I've got 2 bikes, and I'm going to dock both the bikes. And when I release a bike, I want to get the working bike. So I'm going to get rid of this for a moment. Because that's pretty much the same test. It only releases bikes that are working. Okay, so what's happening here is that we're still just getting something different. So let's actually have a look at what this is. So I'm getting false. Ooh, hold on. It's a bad way of doing that. Back view. I'll have to do it slowly, fine. Broken blank report. Okay, so bike working is false. Can you see that this is the broken bike? So it's giving me back the broken bike. And this is because the way that I've written my code is just popping rather than trying to find it. So it just pops the last one. So my conditions are if it's empty, it will just say it's a non-available, all broken, so all are broken. And then it just removes the last one. So if there are some that are broken, some that are working, it will just remove the last one even if it is broken. So there needs to be another check here. And this is what this spec is meant to be catching. So we can remove my IP statement. And I am going to change my code. So docking station. Now I've written my spec. I want to find it's like this and like this. The first one, that is bike dot working. Cool. So can I therefore shorten that to I can indeed. Cool. So let's update my work. Dog station when there are none working, yes, but I've also now added another spec, which is when it releases, when there are working bikes, it releases, which is pretty much what happened here, right? I just added another condition. My method is only ever going to return a bike or these two things. So actually I'm going to leave that. I think that's fine. My dock method has below capacity. Yeah, cool. So I'd like dock stations, so returning bikes, broken not, I can. I can dock any kind of bike. I can not release broken bikes. I'd like to find a report a break. A bike is working. Cool. I think I'm done. Yes, yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, yes. Fine. Branch 1, branch 3, yes, part 3. Git push origin part 3. Cool. Done.